This is how I milk the Boxster. That's it, baby. Give it to me. Yeah.
This isn't your everyday 986 Boxster S. This is a Milesworks Boxster, the kind of machine that makes people stop, stare, and rethink their life choices. And this one is special. This is the first time this particular build is being properly introduced. A collab between Milesworks and the Indecent crew at Tieu Industries right here in Houston. These are the same guys who've been pushing insane widebody Porsche designs and bringing the Milesworks movement stateside. So if it looks like a concept car that slipped out of a design studio and wandered into my bay, that's exactly the vibe. And the seats? Houndstooth. Because I'm pretty sure the Indecent team wasn't letting this thing leave without looking classy and unhinged at the same time. And mileage-wise, we're sitting around 62,000 miles. Still young. But in Porsche years, that's about when parts stop being cheerful and start getting a little spicy with attitude. So why is it here at Yogi's Garage? Well, the usual mid-engine Porsche starter pack. Tune-up, IMS, RMS, full fluid service, and a complete brake job. Basically all the things you handle before the car decides to express itself the expensive way. So sit back, grab a cold one, and enjoy the ride. Are you ready? Let's fix it.
All right, now that I got this 2003 Boxster up in the air, it's time to give it a once-over. I already know what it needs, but I'm doing this for you guys, right? So you want to see what the underside of this Boxster looks like. It's time to work on it and give it the love that it needs. It's got about 60,000+ miles. It just needs a complete tune-up, right? We're gonna be swapping out all of these hoses, all these cooling hoses. I think I'm gonna retain this one. I may get it. The prices of parts have gone down, guys. Like the bottom has literally fallen out on the prices of German parts. So now's the time to start buying them, because I was pretty shocked of how cheap, relatively speaking, these hoses are compared to what I paid for them during the lockdown, the pandemic. These were going for between $50 and $75 each. Uru, not Porsche branded. So yeah, they've definitely come down in price. So a lot going on. I got to get this skid plate off here to get access to the transmission, because we're definitely taking care of this rear main seal leak. As you can see, it's very active. And then we have some other leaks up in the front with the water or the oil cooler. I think it's over here in the back front, because this engine's turned around. Yeah, there. So you can see, maybe, let me put that camera right on you. Yeah, there, you can see that oil slick. That's the oil cooler. That is a priority right there. That's got to come out, because if that fails, intermix happens, and then no bueno, party over. All right. So let's get to work. So in order to stay organized, you got to put things up on a list, right? And you got to keep staring at it, because you're going to keep looking at it, and you may add stuff to it, more details, etc., etc. I didn't break down the steps in there. It's a whole thing. But oil and filter, transmission fluid, rear main seal, IMS, brake job, rotors, pads. This is removing them and then installing them, flushing, cooling. I'm going to replace the thermostat and the hoses, air oil separator, oil cooler, and the hose. Ignition, coils, plugs, clutch, dual mass flywheel, the entire kit and bearings. So yeah, I have other projects too. So like the Lamborghini, it's at the machine shop. The 928 needs to go to the machine shop. Kinds of good projects here. And then here's one that I finished, and I can check that off and free up that space.
All right, let me set the stage for you here. Step one is to get that skid plate off. But I'm not sure how to do that just yet, as this is the first time I've worked on a Boxster configuration. In case you're wondering, 3 is the magic number of how many times it takes for me to hit my head before I decide to take these tires off the car. Now that the fog is cleared, I can see that this is no ordinary skid plate. In fact, if I didn't know any better, I think this thing is bulletproof, or at the very least structural.
All right, I got the bumper liner off. Man, this looks amazing. These guys do really good work. Miles Works lets you do this yourself. They give you the kit. You get some friends to come over, drink some beer, and put this bad boy on your car. You know, this just looks great, man. Unfortunately, the rest of it doesn't look all that great because it looks like this car lived a lot somewhere where there's snow and ice and salt, because it's covered in little bits of rust, especially on the shifting linkage and the whole mount and everything, as you can see. So I gotta take care of that once we get this transmission out. But first, I need to drain the fluid out of this thing. And yeah, I'm a little nervous. That looks very sus, and I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to get this thing open. I tell you, I must be getting a little rusty at doing transmissions for Porsches. Yeah, this is the fill hole, not the drain hole. I thought that was the fill hole, but actually the drain hole's right there. Anyway, I loosened that one up, tightened it back up. This one's loose and open, so that's good. This is exactly what you wanted to do here is, you know, make sure that you can open it and fill it before you drain it. And it looks like I can. And the oil smells good. So the gear oil in here looks like it's been handled. That's good, but we're starting from zero. Let's keep going. All right, clutch slave cylinder removed, backup switch removed, gear linkage removed. Now it's time to take this bad boy out. Porsche, like Audi, likes to use different size bolts, different types of bolts, triple squares, regular hex bolts. So I need to keep those in order. And the best way to do that is to use a piece of cardboard and draw it out. Drop your bolts through the hole, poke a hole, drop it through, and mark it. That way you're not fumbling trying to figure this out later. I also need to get this ground off here. I'm guessing it's a ground strap. It looks like a ground strap. Yeah, we'll get that off, and this cross frame here off to get the transmission down.
As always, special thanks to Marshall with Garage Time TV and the general manager of the Shop Club Houston, where Yogi's Garage is located.
Oh, it was really, really close to failing. And no, I don't mean the transmission. I mean the oil cooler. You can see the oil cooler is failing, leaking down into the transmission bell housing and accumulating near the bottom, simulating a rear main seal failure. So I'm not sure. All right, time to take this clutch off and see what I'm dealing with. Reached our goal. I'm gonna take this dual mass flywheel off, but I wanted to show you the condition. I'm gonna have some other people look at this, but to me it looks like it's pretty scorched, man. But it's evenly scorched, so I'm not sure what to make of that. I'm gonna get another pair of eyes on it. But the clutch itself is pretty worn. You can see, and it's glazed over a little bit. I mean, it could have probably gone another 20,000 miles maybe, but again, while you're in here, gallons of this stuff. And those are E-Torques too. Milk it. I'm having to do that because I forgot to open up. Way more effective when you've got the oxygen exchange. And if you think this is all the coolant, you're wrong. This is just the coolant that's in the block. The coolant in the radiators have to be drained from the front. This is how I milk the Boxster. That's it, baby. Give it to me. Yeah. Give it up. You want that green shit out of there, don't you? Yeah. Spit it out. Spit it out. That's very effective. This is way better than on the Carrera, I tell you that. Off. There's a few other things though that I haven't taken off, and that up there is the oil cooler. That's one of them, and then the other thing is the AOS. So I'm gonna have to do that, but I need to make sure that area up there is nice and clean. But the other challenge is going to be getting this area here clean, because this area needs to be pretty clean around the IMS, because you don't want any of that stuff getting inside of the bearing when you put in the new one. So we'll have to take care of that. So one of the first things you have to do before touching that IMS flange is to get this engine in top dead center on cylinder 1. But what I'm gonna do to ease everything up, since this gotta be replaced anyways, you saw these coils are in bad shape. And I'm replacing all the coils, all the plugs. I'm just gonna remove all of the electrical here to make it way easier to turn this car over in order to get to top dead center. Let's do it. Little switch you got to push on those connectors so that these things come out. Otherwise, you'll be here all day. There. These are the original ones. You can see, look at the cracking right there. Definitely needed to be replaced. And for those of you following along at home, the O2 sensor on this side is blocking the coil pack. So you'll just have to, I think it's a 10 mil. Yeah, it's a 10 mil that's mounted to that spot right there, and then just take that off, get that out of the way, and you'll have access. I don't even think I need to do that. I can get up in there without doing that, but I want to get at it. All right, now we get the plugs out. I got to do this 6 times. All right, and here is the ignition system here. Pretty bad shape. This is why you have your car inspected at about 60,000 miles, so that you can resolve these normal serviceable items. Look at that crack. The plugs didn't look too bad. They're not wet or anything, and the bores so far look pretty gosh darn awesome. So this person's been taking care of their car. This is normal wear. It's not a sign of neglect or anything. It's just how it is because the way the engine is placed. So that's a 24 mil bolt on the crank. And so I've got it. I think I got it on the notch. But again, I need to put a pin in there. And unfortunately, the pin that comes in the IMS kit is for a 911 because it's too long for a Boxster. But have no fear, you can use an Allen key. So check this out. So if it's in, it's in. There. And there you go. Look, locked into place. No issues. This main chain that goes across, we only have to lock it on one side. We're going to loosen the tensioner, but we're locking the left side. We'll need replacement caps because you're going to poke a hole in that and yank it out. And if you don't replace these and you try to reuse them, you're going to get a vacuum leak and oil's going to come out and ruin your day like that right there. And this is the perfect height right here, man, to do all the work. I don't need it to be, you know, all the way up in the air. Cool. All right. So here we go. All right. So let's just pop this thing out. And again, it's a single use plug. That sucker's sealed on there. All right. That cam cap went flying somewhere. I don't know where it's at, but that vertical line is the indicator. And what you're looking at there is the intake cam, and the one below that one is the exhaust cam. And on these 3-chain systems, both of them have a slit in them like that. On the 5 chains, it's there is no slit on the top one, just on the bottom one, but you still lock it in the same way. Yeah, right there. There's a threaded mount. I'll show you in a second. I'm gonna get the other cam off and I'll bring you back. All right, and there we go, it's in. I didn't bring you along because it's just 2 vertical slits, and it should go in easy. You should not have to force anything. And I say that because this thing is friction fitted in there, and then you can get your bolt in there and lock it in place so this thing doesn't come out. But I did use a little bit of a pry here just to get it the rest of the way, but it went in just fine. All right, so that's locked in. Now all we gotta do is take the IMS out. All right, I lied. There's one more thing you gotta do. You gotta take the tensioners out, and there's 2. There's one right here for this side, and that is a 27, right? And we'll take that out, and then we gotta take the one over here, and that's pointing down. That's also not a 27, that's a 32 millimeter, and then over here pointing down is also a 32. Once we take the tensioners out, it's gonna leak a whole bunch of oil to be ready, and then we'll come at this thing, but we're gonna clean this whole thing up before we expose the engine to this garbage. But right now, let's just loosen these up and get going. There we go. Should not be that hard to do, especially with an extendable ratchet like this one. And here comes the oil, like I said. And these are under pressure, and when you put them back in, you gotta preload them with oil. That way, you don't start this thing dry. Little O-ring, and this thing did come with replacement O-rings, so I'll be able to use that. But here's one tensioner right here, and the other tensioner right here. Ugh. Woo! All the power. Should put a drippy thingy here and get that out. And this one is definitely gonna leak, so be ready, because it's pointing straight down. Oh, that was kind of anticlimactic, but I'm glad. All right, now we're ready to take the IMS out. yeah, I'd say this stuff works really freaking well. Granted, a lot of that stuff was clutch dust, but a lot of it wasn't. So, wow. Use the whole damn can. And it doesn't have the brake cleaner smell. Wow. All right. I think that's clean. All right, it's counterhold with a flat head screwdriver and a 13 mil socket or a wrench to get this off. And you saw that I didn't take all of, I didn't run these all the way out. No particular reason, for visual effects. That's it. Now you want to pry this gently out, and then we'll clean it again thoroughly before moving forward. But here we go. Took a couple of pry bars, which is why I didn't bring you with me. The first thing I did is I took a dead blow hammer and hammered it to clock it a little bit off center so that it exposes more of a pry point here, and then it exposes a pry point here. You use 2 pry bars and just keep pushing on it, rocking it a little bit, not ugga-dugga because you'll rip these freaking things right off, just nice and slow, and then it'll come out. And you can see that it's already starting to. It's lifted, but I wanted to bring you along for the final reveal. All right, that's out. Here's the bearing. It has a circlip right there, or a spring clip that we need to get out. And then I can put the puller on this thing and pull it out. This is the first steps, getting the IMS out. After I pulled the circlip out, this bearing should come right out. You gotta put that mount, that hex mount there first onto the center stud. And then you put this threaded rod in there on top of that. Make sure they're nice and snug. And then you put your catcher right here. And then you start the loosening process. You turn the nut and you counter hold the smaller rod so that the bearing doesn't spin. All right? Pretty simple. All right. When I start getting close, I'll bring you back. And that pop sound you heard was the bearing coming out. And there goes the oil. And here is the bearing. So this is what causes all the fuss on the forums, all the hype on the internet, this little bearing. And this is a single row bearing, so it is susceptible to failure. It feels really good, but that doesn't mean it won't fail in the future. The car is relatively low miles, so it might. I don't know. I'm not the expert here. All I know is that there's a business for this, and customers want it done. So that's the original bearing, and here's the new bearing. I picked it up from Redline, and honestly, I think this is a white labeled LN Engineering bearing, but you can see it's the same, and it's capped. The dust cover is on both sides on the cover and the bearing is both, so oil can't flow through this. And I think that's the main problem. New bolts, notice they're micro encapsulated. New snap ring. I'm not sure what that little sleeve dowel is for. I'll have to look at that. And a new O-ring for the flange, and the O-ring on the flange. So yeah, and then I'll use this awesome tool that my good friend Bruce let me use. This is the all-in-one kit from LN Engineering. I'm so glad he has it, because I would have had to buy this, but it has the IMS bearing removal tools, cam locking tools, as well as the installation tool and an RMS seal installer. Look at that. And here is the intermediate shaft. All right, here. Look at that. It goes all the way to the front of the engine. There is no bearing on the other side. And then it sits here. So you'll have to clean all of this up, get any of that detritus out of there. I'm gonna stick some brake cleaner all the way down in there to get all of that flushed out so that when the new one goes in, it gets fresh oil. So in the automotive industry, I have learned that this is what's called nickel and diming you, right? You need a new oil cooler. Yes, here it is, new oil cooler. But guess what? No O-rings. They didn't give me any O-rings to go with this. Luckily, I knew that already, and I had to buy them separately. So I just wanted to take a moment and comment that whenever I put things back in a car, if you've known me long enough, you'll know that I always clean the area, clean the parts, and here's an example. Here's the IMS flange. You can't do all of that expensive work for the customer and then not give them a nice, pristine back end. They won't see it, granted, but I'm gonna take pictures so they're gonna see it, but they won't ever see it again, and it'll probably never be this clean again. But that's not the point. If you love what you're doing, this is how you show it. All right, you ready for the big click, click, click? Click, click, and finally, click. And with anything I do, I put witness marks. So we know that that's been torqued. So let's get that center bolt in. Okay, so that center one is 24 approximately foot-pounds. Really not gonna be able to do that the way this thing is configured. So what you can do is just, tighten. And if you're familiar with 24 foot-pounds, then you can get it where you need it to be. Okay, I'm ready to wrap up the IMS bearing project. But I need to get these chain tensioners back in there, and I've cleaned them up. I put new O-rings in there. But you gotta remember which one goes where. New crush washers too. The spring-loaded one goes on bank 2 on the side, and then the oil, the non-spring one goes on the bottom, and it relies mainly on the oil. However, I'm gonna hydraulically charge both of these because it'll help with getting oil to the system faster and keeping the chains tight on startup. So here's how you do it. All right, so you want to get yourself some oil, and I put some in a bowl here, just so that you can get it submerged all the way, like this, right? And then really what you want to do is you want to pump it up until you can't pump it any further. Like that. I mean, it is rock solid. Then you put it in the engine. And you will have to flex a little bit to get that thing in there. And I mean a little bit, I mean a lot of bit. Once you get it threaded, then you can put it in the rest of the way with your 32mm socket. And once it's in, we'll torque it into place. All right, once they're both in, then you torque them in, and you torque them to 85 to 86 Newton meters. So not, nothing too crazy, but nothing too easy either. And you want to go in slow. All right, that one, this one. All right, boys and girls, it's time for Find the O-rings. So these are the 4 O-rings that came off the oil cooler, right? They're 2 different sizes. And I was lucky enough to have some left over from my Porsche build. But when you're looking for these, you need to make sure you get both sizes. And looking over these O-rings, I can tell you that it didn't take much for that oil cooler to fail. And what I mean by that are these O-rings are pretty darn plump, except this one. This one's slightly flat. The larger passages are for oil, and the smaller passages are for coolant. And that makes sense, right? Because if it's leaking oil underneath the oil cooler, then it's, and not coolant, then it's probably the culprit right there. So the trick is to find the right size O-ring. All right, the oil cooler install is complete. And you can see new hose. The hose goes around the throttle body all the way back up to here. It's a little wet because the top of the engine case is wet, and I just noticed it looks kind of wet everywhere. I may have to take a look at that. All right, so now that we've done that, we can check off the oil and cooler with the hoses. Yep. I think I'm going to tackle the cooling and the thermostat today and try to get that knocked out, try to get the ignition coils knocked out, and then the clutch and dual mass flywheel and get all that back installed today. Let's do it. All right, we're on. Got a new screw clamp there. Reuse this one down here because it's unique. Wait a minute, where are you? There you are. Reuse this one down here because it's unique, but the air intake tube is ready, installed, nice and clean. Everything else is starting to come together here. I think I'm ready to put the dual mass flywheel. I thought I was gonna do the cooling hoses, but I'm gonna wait to get the transmission back in so I can get this car up in the air and I can stand under it rather than bending over on it. All right, I didn't take you with me to get this flywheel on, but trust me, it takes two people. There's a dowel guide pin here between this hole and this hole that you gotta line it up wherever it's at. Then you run a bolt in and run another one so that it'll hold it, and then you can come back and run them in. And then we're gonna have to hold it again so we can torque these to yield. Okay, I've got the transmission linkage all reconnected, and I went ahead and put in the official Porsche, and this is not a joke. It may sound like a joke, but this is the official Porsche solution to the gear linkage popping out of the bracket, is to use zip ties. So boom, Porsche approved. Okay, now that the transmission is in, I'll be able to put the CV axles back on, put the shielding and the brace, but not just yet. I want to work on the next thing on the list, and that's cooling, right? I got a bunch of hoses I need to replace and a thermostat. So I'm going to start with that. That's your thermostat right there underneath that flange. You can get your thermostat with or without the flange. I always recommend getting it as a package because, you know, why not? It's not that much cheaper. Let's knock this out. There are four bolts that are 10 mils. There's a gasket in there. You're gonna replace all of it. Let's do it. Okay, I got the thermostat flange off and the thermostat, and I noticed that the previous installer used RTV, and I was questioning that because you usually don't use RTV on this sealing surface. The metal gasket will do the trick, but now I see maybe the reason why. Right there's a chip or a gouge in the surface. I want to record this, and I'm going to send it with just the flange, and if it leaks out, I'll have to pull it off and reseal it. Not a big deal, but I'm trying to keep it, you know, factory original, how it was intended. That is freaking nice. All right, I'm putting on the rear rotors now that I got the new ones in, and I wanted to show them off because I don't know if it's coming out in the camera, but look at how pretty that finish is on this. These are Brembo brake rotors, and I've never seen them in a gunmetal like that, and they look pretty damn awesome. When you're mounting these, do yourself a favor, do the future mechanics a favor, and use some of this. This is just anti-seize. Lose a little bit on the threads, and I mean just a smidge, right? Because what happens is these things get heat soaked, obviously, all day long as you're driving, and they're gonna eventually kind of fuse to the hub. To prevent that from happening, to making your life easier so you're not having to drill these out later, like I did in the front, is to use just a dab of anti-seize on your threads. And you'll do that on your exhaust and things like that, because anything that's near heat or gets heat cycled so many times, you need to put some anti-seize in there to save your day later on, especially on your exhaust manifolds. We're moving right along here, guys, and we are just about done with this 60,000 mile tune-up on this thing. We have oil and filters to do, transmission fluids, basically just the fluids are left. I'm gonna start with the brake bleeding and flushing, and I wanted to show you something. Okay, so what you're seeing here is a moisture level reader for .4 and .3 fluids. And basically what you do is you stick it in the fluid reservoir and see how much moisture is in there. And this is how you know whether or not you need to flush it. So check it out. That beep is not good. That means you're way above what you should have as far as moisture. In the 3 to 4% range is too much moisture in your fluid. So why is that important? Well, it's important because when the brake fluid heats up and there's water in it, it's gonna turn into gas, right? The water's gonna evaporate, it's gonna turn into gas, which will give you a real spongy brake feel or no brake response at all, and that's the last thing you need. So that's why you always measure it. Check to make sure you have the right level of fluid and the moisture level is where it needs to be, right? Those little scan tools are readily available on Amazon. I'll put a link down in the description below so you can check it out. But that's how I gauge whether or not I need to flush the system. And this one needs to be flushed. And to flush the system, you basically wanna take out as much fluid as you can from the reservoir. I use a fluid extractor, which is basically a gigantic turkey baster, and just draw the majority of the fluid, and then I'm gonna use a brake bleed kit to put pressure to the system with fresh fluid and run through the bleeding process. You always start opposite the corner of where the reservoir is located, right? That's the furthest distance all the way over there. And then you go over here to the other side. And then you come over here to this corner, and then finally you end here. And on the Porsches, there's 2 bleeders, one on the back of the caliper and one on the front. And you wanna start with the one on the front and move towards the back, right? Because the back is closest to the pipe, get all the air from the front drained out, and then the air from the back, and then that line will be clear. All right, so what we're gonna do here is I'm gonna turkey baste, pull out as much as I can, and then start putting in fresh fluid. All right, so there you go. This is the last one, right above the master cylinder. And the rule of thumb is if you're draining into a white container, it's easier to see. But the fluid was green originally, and they do that on purpose so that when you flush the fluid, you use a different color so you can tell when you've got fresh fluid. So here, I'm just using a light and you can see that the green at one point, well, I saw it, you didn't see it. I saw that there was green in the color hue, and now you can see that it's clearly yellow there. And so that's it. That's the last of them. All 4 corners have been done. So you shut this off. And now the final test to make sure that you're in the okay range. And now you're in the okay range. Your brakes have been successfully flushed. All right, it's time to fill this thing back up with transmission fluid, and I'm going with liquid moly. I'm not entirely sure why AMSOIL didn't offer up its 75W gear oil for this, but it didn't, even though it's the same stuff. But since it didn't, yay, you get to use this liquid moly stuff. And it is really good. It's a little pricey, but it's certainly good enough for this transmission, as is the AMSOIL. So I've already tightened up the drain plug there. You gotta make sure you do that. And that's at 45 Newton meters roughly, about 32 foot-pounds. Make sure you use a new crush washer, and make sure you get the crush washer out of this one as well. Looks like I did. And then fill it up. And the trick with this filling up is you just keep pouring it in there until it starts dripping out. Once it starts giving you a steady stream, tighten it up, bam, bam, you're done. All right, let's do it. Yeah, and there you go. Once you see that steady stream, you're good. Transmission. Whoop. So what do we have left? Oil, filter, and coolant. This is what you should be seeing in your hoses, is them compressed like this. So you're creating a vacuum, right? And then once that's established, you put your coolant in it, and boom, it's gonna get sucked in all the way into the radiators with very little burping, if any, to do. But you gotta make sure it holds, and right now I don't think it's holding because it's taking a little too much time to pull vacuum on one side. So I'm thinking this side is the culprit, because you can see, well, there it goes, it's starting to collapse. So I just need to keep on doing this, make sure the coolant is taken out, and then I can put the new stuff in. But I'm just double checking everything here, making sure it all looks good. All right, let's keep going. This is not the first time I've done this for a Porsche, and it's not a perfect science, meaning that I typically run out of pressure before I'm able to completely refill the system. But what this does is gets the radiators filled, and then it reaches the back because the reservoir is still low, and it's slowly trickling in, but I think I'm pretty much at a stop here. So now I'm just gonna top it off. I know confidently that the majority of the system has fluid in it, but I'm still about 2 gallons short. I put 6 gallons in here, and I'm looking at about 4 gallons, maybe 3 gallons left. So again, not perfect, but it does do a good job, typically on normal radiator setups. All right, this part is pretty wacky. I'm buttoning up the underside of this Boxster, and this tray here will not go in unless you keep everything loose. So if you're doing this, don't be like me and torque in the transmission brace, because you can see I've had to literally back them out to get this thing to flex enough to line it up. And even then, with the bolt practically out, I had to get Marshall with a long bar, with a pry bar here, to push this thing in just enough to hold it in place, and it is not going anywhere. That's a train. Luckily, you know, all of the daily servicing is done in the back, so this is just kind of a one-time thing whenever you're doing major transmission work. All right, I'm putting the finishing touches on this car. I got the underbelly panels on. You notice that they're nice and clean, just like the skid plate is as clean as I can get it or want to get it. Yeah, this stuff is the kind of things that differentiates me from other shops, is that, you know, I prefer to work in a clean environment. And if your environment's not clean, I'm going to go ahead and clean it for you, because I'm sure you would appreciate it, and I know I do. And it's no big deal. It's no sweat off my back. All right, so we've got everything done here. As you can see, I still need to do the rear bumper liner. That's no big deal. I gotta take the tires off and put the hitch pins in the calipers before we take this out and bed in the brakes. All right, so there you go, man. That's a 65,000 mile checkup on these awesome Boxsters. It's not an official checkup, but these are some of the things that you should be looking at when you're servicing these cars. AOS, oil cooler, IMS, rear main seal, all of those things are gonna be failing around this point, right? So get your car up in the air, shine a light underneath. If you start seeing little puddles, this is probably where you should start. So take a look at my video series if you haven't seen the whole series, and let me know what you think, right? Leave a comment down below, subscribe to my channel. Next up is Project Daisy, a 997 Carrera S that needs a restoration. So be sure to stay tuned to that video series. But thanks for watching Yogi's Garage. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.